Hey guys, it's Matt. The basis for this channel is very simple. I just want to reiterate what it is before talking further. Um, the entire basis of the channel, the world isn't very real. It exposes itself as not very real to each of us in a different way every day. Now, the part of the world that seems to be the most real, or one may argue is real, is hijacked, completely hijacked, and is a gigantic, massive deception. So there's part that's not real, but the part we can kind of touch and the part that kind of seems real is a gigantic trick and deception and something that's so massive we have trained ourselves to easily see it at this point, but our friends and family are so close to it, there's nothing there. As I've said before, they're sleeping on King Kong's back, which they believe to be a new beautiful throw rug or shag rug from the 70s. So, world's not very real. The part that's real is incredibly hijacked and is a massive trick and deception. So, who's putting on the massive trick and deception? Why? Well, we have theories. It's fun to speculate, but it's pointless. It wants us jumping into that speculation endlessly. The point is, what do they get out of the trick, and what happens to us if we fall for the trick? Or how do they benefit by us falling for this massive ruse and deception? And even that's not terribly important. It's fun to speculate on. The most important thing is if this gigantic system is here trying to put down a massive trick and ruse and deception on us, what does that tell you about you and how necessary and powerful and what you really are? This is the basis of this channel. This is so horrible to certain troll channels, then they should explain why it's so horrible. We don't, the system, the deception, and the trick itself wants us to spend countless days, hours, weeks, and the better part of the remainder of our lives going after the details as to how every little thing here works. It is the yellow breadcrumbs I've talked about many times. And it will continue to do that. Yesterday was a reality exercise looking at the rings of power. It was also a screen exercise. It was a screen exercise mixed as much as possible for that relatively insignificant topic, mixed reality mixed in and the nature of reality mixed in the best that I could. For once in a while, of course, we need to return to that. I can't come out here and do this half page every time. And I'm going to move past the half page in just a second. Because the world and pretty much everybody around us is convinced as to how real everything is, so much convinced as to the materialistic or the 3D materialism story that they believe they came they came from a big bang via a monkey man. Think about that. They came from a big bang through a monkey man. There's so much in belief of it. I'm going to do the opposite. A big part of my videos going forward will be to point out how unreal the world is, very similar to two videos back where Kiara informs me with pictures taken as she's driving by the structure of the World's Fair in Queens, or the skeletal remains of what's still there in Queens, gets out of the car, slows the car down, sends me a whole series of things in a PDF as to what those skeletal remains of what remains of the World Fair, what it's all about, things I didn't even show you. And then I go to the damn movie review or trailer for a movie I had never heard of. It's not even released yet. Something about Armageddon starring Anthony Hopkins, and boom, there it is. The skeletal remains of what I was just these. So a big part of the channel is going to be not just my own synchronicities and strange occurrences, but sharing what you share with me and things like that. Um, I don't think we can do this enough. Although I can say, and I'm completely convinced that this world's not very real. The natural tendency, of course, there's a lot of forces pulling us back into the way we used to be. That everything is very real. So that, if you're completely convinced and you don't need to see anymore, well, a big part of this channel is going to be a lot of strange examples as to how unreal this world really is. And the one part of that story I wanted to, I've talked about stalled century before, no doubt about it. But one of my biggest fascinations is how two things, how the people around us, our family, and my friend Tony, for example, is one of a million examples that we all have, why they can't see the very basic things that we can see that point to how unnatural the world has become. As I've said, its ruse and its deception and its presentation is not nearly as professional today as it was in the 70s or 80s. Just go watch an old headline news with Walter Cronkite. I mean, of course, the trick and the deception was there as well, but its presentation was much more believable and much more professional. So in terms of stalled century, at some point, the second part of what fascinates me the most is how much of this are people around us going to accept in terms of the stalled century. I was thinking about it this morning in preparation of this video. I always sometimes take a few notes, and oh boy, it's an orange book. what what Illuminati message? Oh boy, does anybody want to hear? Let me hold it up if anybody wants to focus on that. Um, Look, I always make some notes, and what I wrote down here was since 1970, what they've given us it's a pacified and stalled world. I wrote stalled century, stalled and pacified. They've given us apps, craft beer, and designer drugs. It's a world. So what? Your world since 1970 or so hasn't really progressed except in the area of apps, craft beers, and designer drugs? Pretty much. Now, apps, that's the catch-all for technology. Okay, any technology that's a consumer-driven technology that pulls somebody outside of themselves and their own thoughts and their own natural imagination into it's telling you what to imagine or what to think, or pulling you into a TikTok video or into Twitch and all this nonsense. And so apps is general. It also might be an improvement in iPhone 50 or what the next iPad is. The artificial technology that's there to take the place of real, their word, not ours, but real, quote, human imagination and creativity. So basically, since 1970, we have been given, and the world has advanced, not at all, except in the areas of apps, craft beers, and designer drugs. That's it. Let's just go back and why don't the people around us notice this? Um, my list. I mean, we've done this before. I'll be very quick. Um, the cures for like if what do you, what how do people how do the palace guard defend reality, defend that all of this is normal? We have no cures for real diseases for almost 50 years for the most part. Now, they're really good at keeping people alive or keeping people in whatever term they want to use, remission, or using a stent to unclog an artery or whatever it may be. But that's enough to pacify the people that there are these wondrous advances in medicine. But at the root of it, there is no cure for any of the major killers that was around in 1970. Um, Energy. Okay, well, let's just do this quickly. Obviously, free energy sources have existed for a long time. They can never break the chain or the cycle of petroleum and refined gasoline. And the way energy delivers hasn't changed since the 50s or the 40s. It doesn't make any sense. You have all this wondrous technology being developed over here, apps, craft beers, and designer drugs, and just the apps alone or the technology never translates into a better world. The people are accepting of this. It can only translate into a better world in terms of a faster computer or getting onto a new app or TikTok where somebody's doing a new dance. Even the dance is out to remove imagination and creativity. The dances are all rote, if that's the right word. It's well, that's not a hand symbol. The dances are all, it's what they tell, how they tell you to dance. Dancing, per its natural origins and roots, and quote a real human being, is about doing what you want to do to the music, not the TikTok dances. Have you ever? No, it's what they tell you to do. Here, mimic this, copy this, and then we'll make this go viral. Even dancing, they've removed human creativity in these ridiculous. But that's what the young generation thinks dancing is. It's just copying and trying to mimic somebody on TikTok and seeing if you can do the steps. The evil genius we're dealing with here is, in some cases, it's beyond measure, and we shouldn't underestimate it. So I'm not just, okay, we've talked about energy, but like the simple things like gas mileage. Your cousins will know, they just think this is all normal and the best a modern society, can achieve. We pretty much have the same gas mileage that they were able to do in the 70s. I mean, this just, I don't understand how people don't, how many, what if, I want to say to some of my friends that I no longer talk to, or my cousins or whatever, what if it was 400 years from now and they're putting gasoline in your car and the sticker says highway 38? I mean, at what point are you going to say this isn't normal? Something potentially nefarious is going on here. So we say, well, we're living kind of the same way we've been living since the 70s. I mean, people that, like us that are claiming we're waking up to this, well, I think we have good proof and evidence where the defenders of reality, the Palace Guard, and they'll be like, well, it does make sense that the cars today are basically doing what some cars could do gas mileage wise in the 70s. And, so of course there were cars in the 70s that did 13 or 11 city highway or city mileage, but these gigantic, boats, Cadillac Brougham, and I mean, it's not that much different. It really isn't. Considering this wondrous tech, I mean, it's just completely illogical for somebody like you and me to expect some of that tech to bleed back into the gas mileage. And I'm not talking about hybrid or electric, just the gas mileage in a regular engine. Obviously, all of these things, if you want to get very conspiratorial, I try to hold a little bit of that back because I don't know, who potentially, I say this a lot, who this potentially would be passed to, or who will see this. But with a net 80 to 120 subscribers a month net, I don't think anybody other than our group is seeing it anyway. So somebody's yelling at me or throwing the rubber ducky, Matt, don't hold back the conspiracy, just go the whole way with the nature of the conversation. I hear you. Um, Obviously they have the ability, just regular gas, petrol, regular V6, V8 engine, not hybrid. Of course, they have the technology for that engine to, I would say do 150 miles a gallon, but probably 500 miles, or to exactly harness when you go down a hill or drive down the side of a mountain. They of course have the technology today to harness that energy back up. And I know the hybrid kind of works like that, but come on. I mean, it's just absurd that people people accept this, and when we question it, then we're just strange conspiracy people. Um, Clean water, clean water. I mean that they're, of course they have simple, and I'm not talking about reverse osmosis to clean water or complicated systems. Reverse osmosis, the wastewater is 10 times the clean water. They have ways. These technologies exist. The nefarious element that won't share these things with the population or with the people. That, whether it be taking this device or whatever it is into a village in Africa that's struggling with pollution that's in their local stream. The ability to produce clean water, they've probably had that forever. I mean, that's not shared with us. And I'm not talking about the techniques that we know about. I'm talking about things that obviously exist at this point that are efficient, immediate, cheap, easy to set up. You can't bring forth all this wondrous technology in consumer electronics. You can't revolutionize the world with apps, craft beer, and designer drugs and then say, oh, none of that applies over here. It doesn't work. We're the only ones that can ever see this. It's frustrating for us. I mean, just I wrote a lot of trivial things down. Roads. They, of course, the technology exists where when they lay a road or a highway down, that it would go even in the coldest of climates of thaw and freeze and thaw like Maine or New Hampshire, the road should last 100, 150 years. Is there any doubt that technology exists? The same technology is being used. Here we go back to the 1970s, where this Route 202, where I live, goes into King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, where the big mall is, and then you can take the Schuylkill Expressway down to Philadelphia. Am I allowed to say that? Is that inciting anything if I make fun of the name of the highway? Um, it's this form of concrete that within 10 years, I mean, I guess they redid most of it about 20 years ago, but 10 years it started to form some holes, and it's still in decent shape. Pennsylvania roads are some of the worst in the United States. And I've mentioned this before. These holes that formed 10 to 12 years ago, they're still there. Like there's no ability for the state to make repairs. I said this before. If the state just paid me a mediocre stipend of 150 bucks and gave me the authority without me being arrested to go out with a bag of asphalt fill, I could go out there myself and fix these holes. It's not a big deal. Yet they're still there in the same places 10 years later. Incredible. Some can damage the car. It is just amazing. And just a reminder of the subject here, I have a whole list of things I've written down, but just a reminder, in hundreds of areas, our lives or the lives of the people could have been dramatically improved. Almost everything we consider to be a modern day problem, 80% of it at least, could have been relieved if these cures, this technology, whatever exists, has or was allowed to be shared with the people. Now, if this slipped out to anybody not normally in our group, that isn't tremendously conspiratorial. It doesn't imply there's a nefarious group holding it back. It says there's a nefarious group holding it back. But as weird as that sounds, or as conspiratorial as that sounds, how many examples do you need to see, or how much time needs to go by before, quote, a conspiracy person that makes this argument, where the argument has merit? We're generally living the same way we were living in the 70s. As I said, you have all this wondrous improvement over here, which I've coined into the phrase apps, craft beer, and designer drugs, of which I'm mostly talking about the technology, of course, but it doesn't filter down into how we're living our lives. But that's just normal to people. Matt, you're a conspiracy person. What if it was 100 years from now and we're living the same way basically we're living in the 70s? See what I'm saying? Um, and I'm gonna get more conspiratorial as this goes on, even with something as simple as when you call. I'm gonna get back to this, but let me do these other big ones first. When you call a voicemail, I don't know if it's Verizon or the main carriers, still say something like, what is it? You have reached an automated message machine, or the party, and the person would say their name, or there's a whole 25-second thing to listen to, or whatever it may be, 20 seconds. I know with Verizon, I believe it is, you have reached an automatic message machine. The same voice has been there for 20 years. Now, people don't know what to do. Like if you called somebody and there was just a beep, we would have no idea what to do. So you must ask yourself, why is the same message there for 20 years? Well, it gets real conspiratorial with that, but let's just go through the basics first. But just does that make any sense to you? That there needs to be a woman's voice and computer where you have to kind of wait through it? Is calling and leaving a message for someone on a phone, is that new to anybody? See where I'm going with this? So let's continue. I wrote down airport. And again, I haven't thought this one through, and I haven't been to an airport for a long time and probably will never be able to go back. But just the stresses of it. If all of this wondrous technology over here, or AI systems and all this great stuff Elon Musk talks about, filtered through, then it's 2022. It is not 1991 and Bill Clinton in office. It's 2022, pushing a quarter into the new century. At this point, you should be able to just walk into the airport, walk through something, or maybe flash your license or whatever it may be, and just go to your gate. That no stress, simple. It would be that simple if whatever they can do over here, they would actually use to benefit people's lives, to benefits people's lives. They don't use it to benefit people's lives. If you're just stumbling upon this video, like, well, that's too conspiratorial for me to I'm the palace guard. That's too conspiratorial for me to take right now. Fine, but play this video or remember this video 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Are we still living like we were living in the 70s? How much time needs to go by where you say something else is going on? That's all we're saying. Heating and air conditioning. Again, this lists are endless. Heating and air conditioning. What else can there be, Matt? A lot of. So there can be no different ways to heat your home. So the same techniques from the 50s and the 40s. Giant oil delivery truck comes in down my driveway. The driver gets out. Think about how ridiculous this is. We're a quarter into the new, quote, new wondrous century. Driver gets out with a gigantic hose. I mean, this is 1950s stuff. We can't expect more. They go down around the side of my house, and you can hear him when I'm here. He clamps it on. Oil's being, if there was ever a leak or anything, it would just be like oil would just leak everywhere, and the Pennsylvania State Commissions would have to come out and be like, this is some sort of, now this is a hazmat cleanup site. You can't even go into your own home. And it shuts the oil off. I mean, come on. Dirty, thick, disgusting oil. Every year, guy has to come over and clean out my oil burner. There's all this dirt and sludge and a new filter and stuff gets all over the floor that he doesn't clean up that I've got to clean up. And it's 1940s technology, folks. Palace Guard, if they were taking a podium as my adversary, come on, sir, as my adversary, they would argue this is the best we can do. And it's just, they would argue that it's come on, sir. It's conspiratorial that you think this stuff's being held back. Oh, sure. What if it was 400 years from now and some guy came down with a truck, sludge oil so I could heat my home? No, it's just unreasonable that we could think there could be actually technologies out there that make all of this stuff just go away. Or they haven't perfected the solar panel by now. People put these gigantic, ugly-ass, thick, heavy solar panels all over one side of their roof. I know they do better today, and there has been advances, but not what it should be. You put that shit all over your roof on one side, as ugly as that shit is, it should power your whole house with no. I know people say some people get money back and all that, but come on, it doesn't. For these big, heavy things, it should be. I guarantee they have it where you could put one little freaking frisbee thing on your roof. It should power your whole house. I believe that exists. Is that so conspiratorial? It's 2022, a quarter into the new century. So my heating, air conditioning. I've got this window. I still have it in. I haven't used it for a while. It's getting cold here in the morning. Window air conditioner. I mean, it's the same tech, but it's worse than the 50s because they're not allowed environmentally to put real freon in it. So it's not as good as the ones that used to have the real freon. But it's like you turn it on and it's blowing out its air. It's a Home Depot window air conditioner. But then when the compressor kicks on, the technology is no different than what was in a dehumidifier in 1940. It goes blowing air. Compressor kicks on, so it gets cold. It's not. It is that bad. Actually, I'm saying it's not. It is that bad, and it's only 2 years old. It gets loud. So you just think of there's no this tech. This is 1940s tech. It is, and it's worse because they don't allow the real freon. It's this environmentally friendly stuff, so it doesn't get as cold. There's no other possibility that you think they have that could You could put a little something in the window would make ice cold air. Nah, just nah. Why would it? You'd have to be a real conspiracy person to think these technologies exist. Guys, the way people are on the ship of fools, and they get the download and the frequency, they become blind to anything that's we once called common sense. I would think, boy, if we live like we lived in 1970 and it's 100 years from now, maybe people will wake up to it because they're on the ship and the frequency and the download. I believe now it could be 100 years from now. And if the window air conditioner worked the same way, I think people would be like, well, what do you expect? They would defend it in some way. At that point, it would be complete idiocracy, the movie times 100, and they would always be a defender of the palace guard. Um, I wrote heating and air conditioning. The way a child learns in school, it gets worse. Common Core, this weird way they do math. I mean, all this technology can't be applied. The kids today, they should be brilliant. The way of teaching and learning there should be breakthroughs every 5 to 10 years that translate into better children. It never happens. I'll end the list, guys. You could do this in every single facet of society. It's not much different than when the Carpenters broke through with "Rainy Days and Mondays Always Get Me Down." That was the #1 hit. Miami Vice, Miami Vice, Bratislava, #1 new hit. "Rainy Days and Mondays Always Get Me Down." If people, the Palace Guard, and your guy down the cul-de-sac, and your cousins and brothers and sisters, they think that living basically the same way when "Rainy Days and Mondays" broke through, that's normal. We can't help them. Politicians, I wrote down here. It's just out of the question that there couldn't always be polarization and one side hates the other. Couldn't possibly ever be. Obviously, who are you talking to here? I'm well aware the whole system is set up to produce this negative energy. The whole system is fake. But I'm just saying, why don't people notice this? You'd say, how there's never going to be a politician again that actually can get the votes from both sides, that can actually be loved and bring people to it. They don't expect this to ever be possible because the system has beaten it in that it always is. You hate the one side more than you love the candidate you're voting for. Polarization just comes along with politics. Nobody ever expects there could ever be a politician that could be loved on both sides. But why? I mean, if you could, that by itself, you can use that to prove politics isn't real. It's just decade after decade, 40, 50, 60, 70 years goes by, and there isn't whether it be at the presidential level or senator level or whatever that people like on both sides. That's just that by itself. Somebody down the cul-de-sac who doesn't investigate, but we investigate, should say, yeah, after 100 years, somebody should come along that was just liked. That does kind of give it away, Matt, that something weird is going on. Of course, they'll never go there. They're not capable of ever going there. All right, we've all heard it thousands and thousands of times, but I'm going to put my microphone onto the computer so you can hear it. You all know it, but here we go.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
They're saying
is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Okay. Your call if you're outside the United States, guys, this is Verizon. I don't. T-Mobile says they're larger now. Whatever. It doesn't. This is the big one in the United States for all cell phones. Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice messaging system. Then it says, I state your name. I state your 10-digit number is not available. That's what was not said, and it would push it closer to 25 to 30 seconds. At the tone, please record your message. When you finish recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options. Now, I could see that message being applicable if it was, I don't know, the early 90s, and people were still getting comfortable with their cell phones, the very early 90s. Although I remember my uncle had a bag phone in the mid 80s, I believe it were, some kind of a car phone before that. Okay, but let's just say once the year 2002 two came along or four, whatever. What's the purpose? Of course, it's nefarious. Of course, it's conspiratorial. What's the purpose of reading out the message hundreds of millions of times an hour? I was going to say a day. If you called your best friend and there'd be a 4 second beep, beep, would you not know what to do? Would you not know? Would you have to be told to hang up? There's a reason for this, guys. And it is nefarious, but who knows exactly what it is. But for the palace guard or defender of reality say this is completely normal to have a 25-second wait before being able to leave a message. That's normal. Like we all haven't left thousands, in some cases, some people, tens of thousands of messages where we wouldn't know what to do after a beep. I mean, to me, this is a major reality giveaway. All right, before it gets real weird, conspiratorial, let's just have fun with the potential 5 people that stumbled upon this video. Matt, nobody stumbles upon your videos. They'll only show it to people that already know what we already know. I agree. Well, let's just say somebody forces their grandmother to watch this. Be no cookie baking for you, grandma, unless you watch this. Sit down here and watch. Who knows? Okay, let's just have fun with that one person that doesn't run in the circles that we run. Let's just say, and for our own purposes, if we ever talk to anybody normal about anything like this, is there anybody in the world let's just say outside of our circles, that is the palace guard or believes the news, that would say there's a reason for 25 seconds of instructions when you are about to leave a message for somebody calling on a cell phone in the year 2022, almost a quarter into the quote new millennium century, quarter into the new century, a good ways into the new millennium. Is there anybody in the world that would say, well, some people might not know what to do? What? What? So when you when you buy a light bulb, there should be a gigantic instruction on the side for the one guy in Mongolia. It's his first light bulb. Come on, sir. It doesn't. There's nothing anybody could come up with that say why 25 seconds of instructions are needed. If the real palace guard or the desperate palace guard would be like, well, Matt, what you have to know who you're calling. What if you're calling the wrong person? Oh, most people are dialing numbers. They're not just punching in number 5 for their best friend. It shows you who you're calling. Oh, you have to hear the whole thing. And fine, if that's the case, and you need to be assured who you're calling and you're getting the message, then it would just be the number. You'd call up and it would say 610-555-5555 beep, and it would be 5 seconds. So okay, I got the number right. Beep. Okay. There's nothing anybody could, because there's no argument on the other side. Then should anything be taken off the table, even if my explanation seems strange and way out there, padded white room conspiratorial? The palace guard will say, I agree, Matt, there is no explanation, but your reasoning certainly can't be on the table as valid. Okay. Here it is. Now let's stop talking to the 5 people that may stumble upon and let's talk to the 5,000 people that are here regularly. This reality system, people used to say, let me back up a bit. This could take a little while. People used to say 10, 12 years ago, there's beyond Matt, if you could get beyond the police lineup, beyond the final curtain, if that was ever attainable, and it's not in this endless maze chase reality, there is some sort of an AI system here. And I would laugh at that. Come on, I'm taking that more and more seriously as time goes on, but not that you could walk into a room and there's some lawnmower man, Lieutenant Barkley plugged into the computer or Whopper supercomputer or something you could point at and touch. Almost like what I call the dark part of reality overlay, or the screen, what I call the screen. It does seem to operate more like an AI or something that's not at all like us, not a spiritual entity at all. It does operate more like an AI as I observe it and as we observe it as the years go by. And one way it does this is, of course, we know one of its major plays, the first play in the playbook, blocking and tackling, is distraction. If we cannot screw a human being what they call us in the ways we want, then the fallback is always distraction. And that's all this is. In terms of how it employs distraction, its incrementalism strategy is inhuman. It is like an AI. So just this is what's going on in my opinion with the message, the cell message. And Matt, are you implying that just if somebody leaves one message a day, occupying their time for an additional 25 seconds is going to make a difference? Yes. As you add up collectively into the millions and tens of millions, and it's not just focused on cell phones, it distracts incrementally in so many different parts of your life and so many different facets of society that collectively this adds up to billions upon billions of hours and days. It's expert in this regard, and its thinking is more of like an AI. So, an example that pops to mind, it's not the greatest, is I don't know. There's a script. The airlines are struggling in the 80s and the 70s. It's just a script that comes and goes from this fake reality. Airlines are in trouble. Same airlines are just, that we were told when I tried to understand the stock market and figure that out like it was something real before I knew it was completely fake, they would say, "Oh, airline, that's just it's just a trading vehicle. There's no long-term profits. The airlines don't hold any reserves. You just pop in and out of it as a trading vehicle. Sometimes airlines get hot and the stock will go from 3 to 10, and you can make a ton of money, and then it'll go down. But there's no like long-term assets to invest in. It's just whatever the airline can do daily or quarterly. This is why, and they told us this on CNBC and all these false channels for the 5 years I watched trying to figure out the stock market, and right around the year 2000 to 2005, like that was something to be figured out before I knew any better. But they would talk about that. By the way, that's the reason all the airlines do operate. They don't have money in the bank other than what they need to operate for the week. That's why they all would have gone under the first year 2020 with CV, with travel just screeching to a halt. With maybe Southwest and maybe one or two would have survived. 25 others would have all gone under if anything were real. But I remember them talking about things like the I know this is going to be a bit wrong, but it's the way I remember it, and it's useful in this to go forth in this Verizon voicemail example. If they when they decided to replace real spoons, metal spoons or forks or whatever, which they used to have on flights in the 70s and 80s, maybe even the 90s, or they would replace that with plastic, or they stopped having any meals. The cumulative savings of all the airlines adopting certain things at the same time added up to hundreds of millions of dollars of savings a day based on the number of flights. And it didn't seem like much. It was the principle was kind of like just take away a bag of peanuts, and if all the airlines decide to do it, that's going to translate into hundreds of millions of dollars of savings a week just taken away. And it wasn't just taking away a bag of peanuts, but that's basically what was going on. It was this little tiny incremental changes because of the number of flights that happen daily all over the earth, then it would translate. And I think it's the same thing. I believe that's what the message is, why it's still 25 seconds. And they know people just accept this as normal, and nobody but Matt and a few people will ever question it. So they can so it sounds bizarre to anybody that doesn't hasn't observed this system or how it does business, that maybe one guy leaves one message a day or one girl leaves one message a day. So they have to wait 22 or 25 or 28 seconds or whatever it is before they can leave a message. People's messages sometimes are a little bit different. So how does that benefit a reality that's designed to distract? Because it thinks in terms of incredible non-human incrementalism. It adds up all of the calls that happen per day and all the people that collectively wait. And that can be translated into hundreds of thousands of hours or whatever. I haven't done the math, obviously, per day. And then if it can get you, I'll give you another example. I used to go to the Wawa to it sounds so funny to people that aren't used to it. This is a convenience store around here like 7-Eleven. We grew up with it. Wawa. It sounds so ridiculous to people that don't know the store. Um, I I it was just 5 years ago, I believe. You put a credit card in, or you could just flash it, or you pull it out. It was quick. It's it's worse today. The process is slower. You put it in and you have to leave it in. Reading chip card, it'll say for 4 or 5 seconds. Remove card. It's all slower today than it was just 5 years ago. And this is as conspiratorial as it gets, and as white padded room stuff for anybody that doesn't look into the things that we look in. They'll still Anybody normal will come along and say, Matt, don't you, sir, don't you, come on, sir, don't you read the news? All the cyber attacks, the normie and the palace guard will have reasons. Matt, they have to have additional levels of security. The chip has to be left in. Don't you want to stay safe, Matt? They're always gonna provide the palace guard with a reason. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. You have to wait 5 seconds before, at least I don't know, 5 to 8 seconds at the gas pump where I go, remove chip card now, whatever, where that didn't exist just a few years ago. I don't care what reason they give me for it. The amount of times this screen operates like an AI, the amount of times that happens cumulatively then adds up to hundreds of thousands of hours a day of distraction. And it knows it can just get you in every little place. And but Matt, that would still leave somebody would still go home after work, and after they help the family and the spouse do the dishes, and they still get 2 hours of alone time. And I hear you, I hear you, but I don't. It's just not the way it thinks. And it's not ever done. It's like the Terminator. It doesn't finish. It will always work to incrementally add a distraction. And it's I and the what Matt, if anybody's struggling with this, yeah, let's just get right to it. Well, what? Okay, what? It's fine, Matt. I agree. It's out to distract at every turn, even if it could just collect 1 second here, collect 1 second there. Incremental, cumulative effect adds up into over time thousands of years of distractions, and then more. Simply, it goes back to my half page of the one sentence. This reality system and its minions in the screen is here to distract or to hide a real person or a real spiritual being from understanding its true nature. If it understands its true nature, it can then live its life in line with its true nature, or what we're mind wiped and we don't have all the answers, but what we believe, how we can use this reality to do certain work that we need to do here for ourselves, or to drop baggage off here. It never wants us to come to the highest spiritual realizations. Um, this is why the graduated animal farms exist. Alex Jones will give tons of truth. Tons of truth. I watched Alex Jones for years. Many of us went through that farm. Of course, but it will never, there's never the spiritual truth. It will give away everything as long as it keeps people satisfied that they're getting the whole story, and it doesn't lead someone to understanding the worry about yourself, understanding there's two arms being the Vitruvian man is being pulled two ways. One and the tug of war in this reality system is not fair. One side being pulled towards spiritual self, one side being pulled towards material self, ego, body, the rewards of this reality. It's not an equal pull. This reality has almost cut this one side off completely, where people don't even, atheists and many people don't even believe they have a soul or a spiritual side at all. It's not a fair Vitruvian man tug of war, pulling his arms, or ripping his, or Vitruvian man having his limbs being torn apart by unseen elephants potentially. So it's not, it's really, we have a sense of this, and we've evened the playing field with with this, with the reality's tactics. But most people, unfortunately, I don't think they'll ever see it. So it no tiny bit of, if it can break off just a little piece in its favor, then it doesn't matter how small that piece is regarding the individual it's distracting or it's taking from, because its calculations are cumulative across how many ever real people are here. And I'm sure, I didn't even think about the chip card thing. I just thought of that, how that takes longer now than it did just a few years ago, related to the Verizon voice message. But should come back, and I'll look to your comments. But usually when I, ask for comments this late in the video, it's hard to find those comments. They're mixed amongst so many other different things. Should do a video just saying what are all the ways. I think all the old guard would agree with what I'm saying. They'd be like, just from a common sense perspective, why in 2022 would the card need to stay in longer? Doesn't Shouldn't technology make our lives easier? I mean, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, of course. So there's nobody that's new, even to conspiracy, that's going to buy what I'm saying. It's just too out there, too bizarre. The old guard, I'm sure, would be like, yeah, I never thought of that one, Matt, but yeah, that I could see them doing that. I assure you, the old guard's like, yeah, that's how it works. No doubt about it. I look for any old guard. I look for your comment saying old guard comment, Matt. Don't put words in my mouth. That is not how it would work. I look for that. None of the old guards, when I speak for the old guard, I'm pretty sure I know how we think at this point or what we've seen over the last 12 or plus years. So it would be good to do a video just what are all the other ways. It's just, God, and then we could come up with thousands. It just takes a little bit more of your time here than it did 5 or 10 years ago. And the people don't notice. And the people think it's just completely normal. And when some people might question it, and they're at the gas pump and like, hey, buddy, me? Some guy over there filling his. Why 5 years ago you just put slide the thing in and out or just flash it? Now you leave chip card inserted. Why is it getting worse? And he'd have an explanation. The palace guard, the defenders of reality. Oh, been hearing about all those cyber attacks, right? On all the credit cards being used at Target and all the everything. See, these chips now. There's all these levels of security. So you have to leave it in longer because of the cyber attacks. And then the person asking the question wouldn't be investigating reality like we do. That would be good enough for them. Like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that's all. The palace guard has a reason for everything, that they're able to regurgitate, spit up, or vomit back up the script that they've been given to run when anybody with a brain or some common sense questions some of these things. Guys, another one of these distractions is real ID in the United States. This list of questions and answers will scroll. It just goes on and on and on, much more than what I'm going to show you here from the Department of Homeland Security. And I knew there wouldn't be any explanation as to the real question and the only question that matters. Why are we doing this? Why is real ID necessary for the safety of a quote, end quote, U.S. citizen? This will scroll slowly. This list goes on forever. No answer or question. Why do we need to do this in the United States? Nothing. Just has to be done, compliant dates. And let me switch over to it right now and look at some of the questions and answers. And actually, as we do this, I'll give you some information about Real ID in the US. But before we do that, or if anybody, this is getting long and anybody wants to check out, the main reason for Real ID, from my perspective, just what have we been talking about? It's just to hassle and to distract. To hassle and to distract. Yeah, that's the main reason. And nobody that came up with this, nobody that worked on it, nobody in any federal agency, if you put them on a lie detector, they're not going to have any idea what you're talking about. It. The minions implement what the dark reality in the screen wants without having any understanding of what they're doing. They know not what they do. They might not even the people in DHS, if you able to talk to them on the street, if that's even legal. The top people there might not even be ready to give you an explanation. If you say, why do we need to do this? They'll give you some mumbo jumbo. I mean, it'll say here, let me go up here where there's some sort of an explanation, but there's nothing here. Passed by Congress in 2005, the Real ID Act 2005, a 20-year late implementation. That's government efficiency at its finest, isn't it? It was recommended by the 7-Eleven Commission. Oh my gosh. Federal government sets standards for the issuance of sources of identification, such as driver's license. So maybe the DHS people would say, the federal government, because of what happened in 2001, there has to be a federal set of standards, high level standards, so we stay safe. And I would say to them, yes, you're raising your hand. Well, you're allowing the same agents, the same little offices in each state that issue driver's license to do the real ID. In other words, when I went in to do my driver's license about a month ago, it was not clear to me how to do this real ID. I don't think I'll ever fly again anyway. So I was like, F it, let's just keep it simple. Give me a new Pennsylvania state driver's license. But they're doing the real ID in the Pennsylvania Driver's License Center. By the way, guys, it's May of 2023 is the compliance date for this real ID. I'll give you some more information about it as we go through this. So in other words, they're worried about federal standards and they don't trust the state standards because of T-ism, or whatever, but they're allowing the states and the same driver's centers to issue the real ID. What's the damn difference? I doubt anybody at DHS could even tell me. They don't, you know the real reason for it? Hassle and distraction. Just one more way, and it's incremental and it's inhuman in its thinking. One more way to hassle your life. One more way to distract. I know that's insane to anybody, the one person a year that stumbles upon these videos. But cumulatively, and how many, let's just say it was my life's mission to come up with all the ways the reality makes your life more miserable, more hassle, more distraction. Things take longer. It would be an endless list of things we could come up with. It's just real ID popped into my head. Um, they don't tell you there's no reason for it. They don't tell you a reason for it. If it's about certain standards, so only you know, the T-ism people they don't get IDs and they can't come in and harm people in the U.S. and do their plots and plans. Well, it's the same states and the same delinquents down at the state agencies issuing the damn real IDs. It would actually, I'm not for them spending an additional $1 billion, but at least it would make more sense if there were federal centers in each state where they are monitoring the standards themselves. Of course, I'm not for that waste and bloat, but at least that would make sense. See what I'm saying? May 3rd, 2023. The main point is a regular state driver's license does not get you on a plane anymore. I think you can use a passport or you can use a real ID. As of today, you just waltz down to the airport with your New York State driver's license or your Alabama driver's license. That will not be good enough as of May 3rd. Where'd they come up with that? May 3rd, 2023. Oh boy. Let me just read you. If anybody questioned that this is not about distraction and hassle, by the way, before I read you this, and this video is basically over, guys. I'll wrap it up. It's just mind-boggling, this minutia and this ridiculous, complicated nightmare that this reality keeps throwing on everybody to make their lives hell, and everybody just keeps accepting it and whatever. It's the same complaints we'll have and always will have. Look at this absolute nonsense. The answer to this question, guys. Yeah, the conspiracy people that say it's about distraction and hassle, they're crazy. Yeah. Yeah, it couldn't be done any better than this. What happens when the real ID enforcement date begins? Oh, federal agencies, including DHS and TSA, may only accept state-issued driver's license and identification card as identification for purposes for accessing federal facilities, including TSA airport security checkpoints, if the license or card was issued by a real ID compliant state in accordance with the real ID security standards. I'll explain that in a second, guys. Meaning the license or card must include the real ID compliant star marking. Enhanced driver's license. Okay, let's stop there. Basically, you know what a real ID seems like to me? It's just a mother effing driver's license with a little star. or a little, I don't know, Bill Clinton's a little picture of Bill Clinton's moon on it, saying it's like a driver's license. It's the same piece of shit we've always gotten. Oh, but this has the real ID standard. Oh, did that mean you have to go get all this special qualifications and background check through federal agencies? No, you just had to sit in front of the same delinquents that issue the state cards in the state centers. So but you have to. It was not. If it was clear, guys, I would have just got the real ID. It, of course, when you look into it, it's never clear. There's always conflicting information. It wasn't like, hey, you can go renew your PA driver's license. If you want the real ID, here's what you have to do: A, B, and C. If it was that clear, I probably would have done it. But it's never that clear. It's the same damn thing with a little stamp that says real ID. I mean, what a joke. People that are going to fly have to run back to the centers, wait in line in those hellholes. Okay, in the state centers. Again, it's the same. What they're doing is they're applying federal standards and then just trusting the states as they always done, with no difference in the standard. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. No, you'd have to be a crazy conspiracy person that say it's just about harassing the populace and no other reason. Okay, where is it? Enhanced driver's license, EDL, issued by the states of Washington, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, and Vermont are considered acceptable alternatives to Real ID compliant cards and will also be accepted for official Real ID purposes. So there at least someone might say, well, at least there's one standard now. Of course, there's not going to be one standard. There's exceptions. Even this Washington State, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, Vermont, they have something called enhanced driver's license. Well, what does that mean? Does that have a picture of Spike Lee on it? Yeah, my EDL has a picture of Spike Lee. I mean, what they do their own thing, but that's accepted. I thought the whole point of this was one federal standard. It just, guys, it is just, if you can't, if the normal person cannot see these sorts of problems with reality itself and how reality is implemented on our heads like a cinder block, then they have their head up their ass. I mean, nothing ever, this is the same shit we've been dealing with our entire lives. Nothing is ever streamlined, nothing is ever simplified, nothing is ever changed to make our lives better, and the people put up with it. Well, Matt, it is a hassle. Look, it is a hassle, but at least we'll be a little bit safer. Right? Wrong. Before all this went down, we had Monique and her friend here as security for Soul Plane, and this was the extent of the security in airports. And then they spent $1 trillion and they put in new federal agencies and they established the Department of Homeland Security, of which TSA is a multi-billion-dollar federal agency underneath the auspices of TSA. And you know what we got today? We got Monique and her friend. If Denzel comes through the security line, I'm taking the rest of the day off. And I'm going straight down with the get down. Woo! Denzel's fine. I like me the young thugs. I like 50 Cent. Ooh, look at it. Look at this little player here. Get your ass back in line. Stuff's cheap. Got a lot of strength in to slap a bitch arm.